Sonic gives the antivirus that never runs out of supply to a frog out of habit, and then says he doesn't remember any frogs being in the other universe, and gets told that the only frogs they saw were in that Frogger game. So Sonic says to stop it, and Tails drives it into a corner and picks it up. And after patting, Sonic says them going to Frogger must have pushed it out of the game or something. Or something indeed. You'd think Sonic or Iggy would have seen the frog follow them in all that time. What, it followed them into the place where Psyche is? Or did it just wait in the DMV? Iggy's smart enough to say it's probably an or something. And the output device has some Street Fighter characters escape it, like Chun-Li. Even though there was no indication all of them were near the output device in cyberspace. And in fact, their games were pretty far from it, so Eggman must have told them to go to it. Because Sonic never went in there. Chun-Li appeals to his ego by saying that she brought her friends to make sure he'll defend his honor by fighting. A better reason for him fighting is that they'll never stop going after him until he wins. I hate that the story takes a million years describing the looks of the characters in a giant paragraph, because it's so boring. And this is Sonic who's facing them, so he could win immediately by spin dashing at their ankles to make them fall over. He could run around them while punching them the whole time and win in seconds. They're not organic, so why would he hold back? Instead, the fight starts with Sonic jumping to dodge someone else's attack, because the fastest thing alive wasn't the fastest to attack, and he lands on Chun-Li's forehead, but she magically doesn't collapse to the ground from the weight and force, because she's a magical creature. Tails does a badnik bounce on multiple of them, including Chun-Li, and the story starts wasting time on padding as the fighters politely let them talk to each other. Iggy threatens the fighters with a security level 10 handset that she could use to delete them. Why doesn't she just do it already instead of threatening them to ruin the element of surprise? She's so stupid for not wanting to use it against them and holding herself back when she knows they're just programs. Instead, Ken kicks it into the air, and everyone but Iggy jumps towards it. Dhalsim catches it, and because he's another new character, it describes him as well as other new rivals for a giant paragraph. It's a good thing I had Street Fighter 2 as a kid, so I know what their real names are and what they're supposed to look like. Why does he even get the chance to taunt him instead of Sonic running up to him at Sonic speed to instantly ram him and send him flying far ahead of its bodyguards? What's the point of writing this if you're not gonna have Sonic be like Sonic, except for the fact that he badnik bounces? Somehow, Sonic decides to prevent Tails from running at him and despairs that they couldn't possibly take out all of the fighters, just because Chun-Li almost beat him, when he'd know that was only because he didn't want to fight a girl and was in a cramped room. Dhalsim manages to crush the black box because of this nonsense. It would have been good writing if instead Sonic accidentally damaged the black box because Dhalsim dropped it from getting rammed. Eggman redundantly tells the fighters to finish them from the Eggmobile, so now there's more padding with his redundant boasting. Eggman says he's decided to replace his robots with computerized badniks, but not because their batteries are better. Instead, it's because there's no nasty oil stains, like Mr. Pollution would think those are nasty. And they're easily reprogrammed and come in better colors. Why are they more easily reprogrammed? Why couldn't he just give his own robots whatever colors he wants? If they were more easily reprogrammed, they would have all recognized Sonic and Tails. Eggman says that in a few hours the whole planet will be covered with them, and then his reign will begin. As a ruler of mindless robots, not an actual ruler. What's the point if he's not governing people? This is so boring. Sonic futilely tells him he'll never succeed, and Eggman wastes my time saying that he wants his computer nicks to throw everyone to cyberspace, when he won't succeed anyways. And is even smart enough to consider stealing Tails' tank design for it. He's taunted by an amplified voice from that very tank, and Replica Sonic is piloting it. That's good, but him firing the tank instantly would have been way better instead of him making him aware of him. There was no foreshadowing that he'd wise up and leave his game when he acted like he wouldn't. I'm glad he thought things through off screen and changed his mind. He says he brought some friends, and 5 humans dived down towards the martial artists, but not directly onto them unfortunately, because that would have started the fighting instantly, instead of them staring at each other for a second. The fighters consist of Ryu and Ken and Blanca. How did Replica Sonic convince some Street Fighter characters to fight other Street Fighter characters if they only decided to fight Sonic because they were following their programming to work for Eggman? They would have just identified Replica Sonic as a rogue program. Or they would have changed their mind as soon as they saw Eggman. How insulting to Sonic and Tails that they needed to be saved by other Street Fighter characters. This should have been a comedy bit where they were all knocked to the floor in a second by Sonic running into them with his fists out. Even Sad AM Sonic would do that. Good crossovers are in service to both franchises. This one portrays the Street Fighter characters as evil and mindless AI instead of showing me what their personalities were actually supposed to be like. These characters are nostalgic to me, but the way the story uses them is awful. How did the computer-generated colors of Replica Sonic look strange under real sunlight? I don't know because it doesn't tell me. He's not really computer-generated, it's just an alternate universe. Because computers don't work that way. The internet doesn't work that way. It's apathetic of Sonic to not want to watch the fight. I want to expect that from Sonic in these books. He tells his friends to get to the tank's battle stations. There's padding until the tank starts firing. It's epic that the tank gets used again, especially because it was built by Tails and a bunch of other people you'd never expect to build it. Which is inspiring instead of just Sonic getting to do everything. So the tank should have been ready to show up before Sonic would have to do any fighting. It's too bad the writer insists on describing it hit by hit to pad it out several paragraphs, instead of being realistic and having them all get wiped out in seconds from every weapon getting used at once. Every time one of the fighters gets killed, he shrinks to a point of light and disappears, so he's just as much a magical creature outside of cyberspace. When I thought the only reason the programs died like that was that they were in cyberspace. What's it supposed to mean by put paid to? I assume from context it means kill. I wish the writer used a variation of that instead. Tails was even smart enough to put sleep gas in the tank. At one point it says the clothes of the fighters were torn from the fight and scorched by the weapons. How are any of the fighters not completely vaporized by the weapons? It's awesome that Tails gets to say finish them off, especially since Eggman had said it. He sees the Eggmobile lower a bomb out of its trapdoor and drop it towards the top of the tank. After padding, Tails grabs Iggy and dives out of the tank and flies away from the potential bomb blast. And as she gets out of his grip, the two Sonics land behind them. The lack of an explosion was given away by the words waiting for the explosion. A faint blue-white light glows over the tank's edge that expands, making the tank disappear. The story drags us out boringly for 2 huge paragraphs. The 4 heroes retreat, and the Replica Sonic gets told to jump back into the cyberspace world and does so. It's weird to Tails to of course wonder if he's okay when the computer gets destroyed. It's nice of Sonic to hope he is. Since the computer screen can get blown up by the reformat bomb, that proves it's not just programs that get destroyed by it. The edge of the program's ball of energy had passed over Sonic before he had noticed, but all it does is give him a strange tingling feeling before the expanding light disappears. So it only affects metal stuff. Eggman taunts them, padding out the story, and shows them a black box and presses a button to make a small point of light appear between Sonic and Tails that flashes red, green, and blue and expands to a robot fish that flops in the air. Why'd he pick that? He even starts pressing new codes into the box after that. I love that Sonic gets to snark, "Oh yeah, very impressive that." Too bad he keeps it going in a way that isn't as great of a line and states the obvious, which is explaining the joke. That sounds familiar. This book has officially done all the major things wrong with comedy that Colors went on to do. Tails won't think he needs to justify spin jumping the Badnik to pieces. Its pieces fly outwards but slow and stop, and then put themselves back together. That's overpowered. He must have used nanobots. Eggman brags that every computerized Badnik is like this. Most of his dialogue is redundant. He says he has a pocket output device, and says it's great for breaking the ice at parties before he laughs. Sonic lampshades that no one invites him to parties. It's nicer to assume the writer knew that and was having Eggman be intentionally dishonest as a joke. Another robot called a buzzer gets made from light, and 4 of the new Badniks start attacking. only to be destroyed and reformed. Eggman says he knows he isn't invited to parties, and that's why he's evil. Eggman says the hideous accident turned him into this, so it didn't need to have him make this petty excuse for being evil. It doesn't make any sense that he would blame other people for it. If he remembers that accident, then he'd know that's the only reason he turned evil. The writers only have him claim that a decent social life would have kept him from being turned evil as a joke in the story. Eventually he presses a button to make the Badniks form into a giant scorpion with a massive cannon tail. How did he need to spend months programming it? He'd only have to give it the same programming as the Badniks. All he would have to do is try to kill Sonic. Iggy gets snatched and so does Tails and aims the cannon for Sonic. Somehow he gulps instead of immediately trying to attack. With how mockingly Eggman's being portrayed, I wonder if the robot itself is going to malfunction. It does. So then him summoning the robot fish would have worked better at this point. It stops moving, and the buttons Eggman's pressing don't work, and the black box explodes, covering Eggman's face in front with black soot and burn marks. The narration says he swore when all he said was blankety blank. I assume this isn't literally what he's saying. It'd be better to just use symbols. It makes sense of Eggman to swear because he's an adult, not to mention a human. And more importantly, he just experienced a box exploding on his hand. So him not swearing would be impossible. He must have had rings that kept his fingers and hand from being destroyed. But not enough to keep him from getting this hurt. What kind of a name is Scipio anyways? Even Eggman wouldn't have a name that bad. The Scipio becomes fuzzy and melts and fades away in static. Tails lampshades how odd that was. The remains of the blown up computer glow and slowly rise in circles, zooming back into the base of the monitor. And the computer reforms, and the screen shows Replica Sonic. It's nice that Sonic's happy that he made it. Replica says he saved them by using Psyche. Somehow, Tails doesn't immediately know who he used to save them from the female gender pronoun. Eventually he says she told him where all of Eggman's crucial files were, and they deleted it, and blew up every output device in the place, and trashed all of his bad programs. So that's why the Scipio disappeared. But from another universe? How? It's great that he's around, because that means there's a backup Sonic if anything happens to the real Sonic. Iggy says nice work, and Psyche says Iggy did all the hard work. She did nothing. Apparently, Iggy gave her the idea. There's more padding until the back end of the Eggmobile explodes, and the Eggmobile falls. The front and back of the small plane cracks apart and falls off. Eggman presses the control, and the straining jets blast him towards the horizon. But he flies feet first, because somehow he thought to have it strapped on backwards. I would have been mad at this confusingly forced portrayal of Eggman, but the majority of the story has him be amazingly competent with a cyberspace computer and computer virus and invincible badniks. Also, when I had him show self-awareness, it wasn't the wrong kind. Like, I know I say that every time. Where a crazy dictator wannabe would never be self-aware enough to say that. He had just enough introspection to know he's bitter, which anyone could do, and just made up a lame excuse for it to have an excuse to demonize his enemies, which is realistic. Forcing Eggman to be lame is still unacceptable, but it could be a lot worse. Sonic wouldn't ask if the computer network's safe now when he was told it was. There's redundant confirming that he's right, and Tails uses dated slang for no reason. Tails gives Replica Sonic and Psyche a purpose in life as guardians of the computer, to be in charge of looking for Eggman and his badniks. That's sweet, because I know a meaner writer would have killed off the so-called Sonic 2. Instead, Sonic calls him excellent and calls Psyche cool. Well, she was cool, but she also came out of nowhere to save Sonic, so that's why I think it's a little lame that she's getting shilled. How is she any different from the ancient walkers? Iggy gets appointed the official link with these two and him, and Sonic just has to break the fourth wall again. Realistically, he's hungry after all this time, so he and Tails get to enjoy a pizza that got the garlic and extra cheese just right. They eat it over the edge of a crater that used to be Wing Fortress. The two of them waste time talking to each other boringly. Tails' dialogue about what they already know is so stilted. If they know this, Why are they discussing it? So saying we know is like as you know. What a cringy paragraph. It just recaps what we already know. Realistically, Sonic says he can hardly face Street Fighter 2 again. Tails wonders if Eggman infected his Game Gear, because he said he infected all of the computers. And he says that's a computer too. No, it isn't. But having to show his friend that he has nothing to be afraid of is enough to give him the courage to put the Street Fighter 2 cartridge into it. There is no such cartridge for the Game Gear. It's just artistic license. The story could have easily ended there. Instead, Tails lampshades this. And when he uses some more dated slang, Sonic gets to tell him to stop. I get to read about Tails praising the pizza he ate, although he pads out the book by praising it more than once. He thanks Sonic and calls him Buddy, and Sonic turns the Game Gear on and acts scared and drops it on the grass. He was only joking, and that wasn't acceptable to joke about because it really scared him. So it's cathartic that he gives "I'll give you only joking, you rotter," and throws mud into his spikes. This handles it so much better than STC. Sonic gets mad, but when it dawns on him that everything's back to normal now so he can goof off enough to dunk Tails in a waterfall, he shouts yes. So at least he's not mad anymore. And it's more a case of two friends feeling safe enough with each other that they think teasing each other isn't the end of the world. It's still not how their friendship is supposed to be, but at least most of the book has their friendship be good anyways. It'd suck if their entire friendship was based on sarcasm and doubting each other. It's too bad the story ends explaining that Sonic's pals have been sucked into cyberspace again, and infected with a disintegrator virus, and Sonic has to face the worst of badniks from his favorite computer games. Why would you end at an interesting and exciting part? Why does it call the enemies from non-Sonic games badniks? That misses what the word badnik actually means. What's so special and great about the word badnik if you're using it for something other than robots that are shaped like animals or insects? If they just destroyed all of the computers, he wouldn't have had to deal with that. This book by James Wallace was an interesting story about Tails and then Sonic traveling through another universe that Eggman used as a computer. The world building of this book is awesome. It takes full advantage of the fact that it's a cyberspace universe and can be as weird as he wants. The output device is an eyeball. It's too bad the story constantly has overly descriptive narration and boring dialogue to pad itself out. So there's a lot of boring parts from the slow pacing. But it was brilliant of Eggman to infect his enemies with a computer virus that forced them to go back into cyberspace. And making invincible badniks was also cool. It was also a lot like Sonic Colors, having Eggman be portrayed shockingly mockingly, and Sonic and Tails tease each other occasionally. Which is bad, but at least it's rare, and usually Eggman's the opposite. It also had a lot of comedy, which just barely is good, even if I didn't like most of it. The majority of the time, the plot isn't about telling jokes. The jokes are not the point of every scene, and the only reason they exist when you could remove most of them and not be confused. And the plot always felt oppressively dark. From at first it seeming to be impossible for Tails to get off cyberspace, and then the heroes having a genuine challenge trying to figure out how to get the cure. And Sonic takes the plot seriously. That's why all the comedy isn't intrusive and story ruining. It's just there, so you don't have to love it to like the story.